We have brass knuckles. Wait, these aren't brass knuckles. That's illegal, Bo. Got these in Mexico. You know what makes these not brass knuckles? Look very carefully. See this little nubbin coming up right there? That makes it a belt buckle. I know, isn't that just such a cop-out? But hey, I wanted to buy a belt buckle. It was easy to take across the border because, I mean, it's not a dangerous weapon. It's a belt buckle. Funny. Now with that out of our system, we are going to drill down exactly what you need to do to prepare before you go out into the field. And we're actually going to use the harshest of environments as an example. We are going to be using Africa. So let's say you're going to Africa to film. Now, I'm actually going to provide a list on our Patreon page of what I personally take to foreign countries. I have a couple of different packing lists for Africa, for Asia, to even just down the street. And you can use that list as a guideline if you'd like. But I'm going to cover a few major things, must-have things that you need in order to survive as a videographer in a foreign country. Now, the first thing you need to know is have lightweight equipment. The more equipment you have does not translate over into a better production. That's one of the biggest myths out there that tends to derail a lot of people and even, make people not want to do nonprofit filmography because they're like, man, I can't afford to get a Steadicam. I can't even afford to get a tripod. Don't let that stop you. As mentioned in a previous lecture, even if you have a smartphone, go out and do it. Video is the most intimate way of impacting the most amount of people. Just do it. Now, what we at Knok Studio have found, being a charity studio that has been doing this since 2011 all over the world, from Nepal to Cambodia to Mexico to West Africa, you name it, we have dialed in nonprofit charity filmography. And what we have found is a digital SLR camera is the way to go. It's lightweight, it's small, and it's easy to conceal. Not that you're trying to sneak around, but let's be honest, you don't want one of those giant big cameras that they have on the news. Now, if you want to impress a client, and if you're in the commercial world, the bigger the camera and the bigger the hood that you can put on the front of the camera, the more likely you'll impress your client. But we at Knok Studio are not about trying to impress people. We are really about just being unseen. So if you have, let's say, a GH5 camera, or even the Panasonic GH4, or depending on when you're seeing this series, they have probably progressed past those models at this point. But the principle is the same. We have a lightweight mirrorless digital SLR camera. You can go to Costco and pick up something phenomenal. Try to pick up a telephoto lens. So that will be a lens where you can zoom in. So preferably above 100 millimeters. So one of my favorite lenses is like a 100 to 300 millimeter, which may seem a little excessive, but that is incredible distance. And you can just zoom in from across the street and get someone at a marketplace who is selling apples and everything, as opposed to walking up with your camera and getting this close to them and getting in their space, getting in their way, and it makes them uncomfortable. That's just not cool. Now, with that being said, you should be asking for permission, unless of course you're in a obviously very public type place. There's a lot of lawyers out there who will say you need to walk around with a stack full of waivers. Honestly, what works for our ministry and what we've been doing for so many years is just get verbal consent. And if you have the camera rolling and say, hey, can we use your image in this ministry video? This is what we're doing. It's documenting the culture of Sierra Leone and also showing what this wonderful church is doing for the orphans on the streets. Can we use you in this selling fruit business that you're doing? And more often than not, they're going to be like, yeah, absolutely. That sounds amazing. So just communicating that and getting their verbal consent usually is pretty much all you need. Now, if you're in a sue happy society, like the United States, for example, you should have a stack of waivers, and you can just easily Google them, just a generic waiver. Hey, can we use your image for our video? And I tend to not do that still, even in the United States. I still just get verbal consent, because once they start signing something, they think that there's money being exchanged. And as you well know, with nonprofit filmography, not a lot of money is being exchanged. So anyway, permission, telephoto lens, but back to the equipment. What I also have is a shotgun microphone, so like a Rode video mic. They're very, very reasonably priced. You can get one from anywhere from $100 to $250. Check Craigslist. They're always out there on Amazon.com. It's fairly decent audio. As a matter of fact, the audio right now that I'm using is from a Rode video mic, and I actually have a long cable that's extended that's going right into my digital SLR camera. It's a very, very simple setup, and yet it looks pretty good, doesn't it? This is like full 4K footage, right? Other things that you need to know is, well, if you have a drone, try to get the smallest, well, okay, not smallest drone possible, because that's not very good quality, but don't bring a giant drone. When you're going through customs, don't call it a drone. People immediately think you're with the military or a spy if you say it's a drone. Just say it's a camera, which technically it is a camera. And also be sure to have some of the batteries fully discharged before you do go. Apparently you can't have fully charged lithium batteries on an airplane, but that's a side thing. I've traveled with lithium batteries all the time and have had some confiscated from me, but usually it has nothing to do with taking down the airplane. It's just some guy in Rwanda who just wants to, you know, target you for some reason. That's a true story, by the way. He took some AA batteries. Like, guy, you took my AA batteries? I've got 50,000 milliamps over here in this other carry-on bag of batteries, but you're gonna take my little AA batteries. Go figure. Also, another thing you need to know, if you have tape, like gaffer tape, which is a great tool to have with you, don't take that on your carry-on. You will get that confiscated. They think you're gonna tie up a flight attendant or do something ridiculous like that. So just don't take tape with you. They will confiscate it for sure. Other things to keep with you, like actually on your person, is not only your passport. Always have your passport on you. When you do have your passport, don't actually hand it to someone. So let's say, for example, let's say these my belt buckle right here. Let's say this is my passport, and they say, you're at a checkpoint, and they say, passport, hold it like this. Don't give it to them, because once they have it, they're gonna look at it like this, and they might even put it in their pocket. And, well, I don't know if we're gonna let you through right now. So just hand it to them. I mean, don't hand it to them, hold it and keep a good grip on that. Another thing you should always have on you is a copy of your passport, not in the same pocket where you store your passport, but a copy, even if it's just a photocopy. Put it in your pants pocket. I actually have a secret pocket in my camera bag for my passport copy, and that's just in the event that, well, let's be honest, your passport is your ticket back home to your country. That's really what you need. And so if you can't really prove that you're from that country, it's gonna be a long process trying to get home. So just have a copy. That's just a good rule of thumb. Another thing to know when it comes to traveling in foreign countries in terms of cash, I try to keep minimal cash on me. This is just a personal thing. Some people have wads upon wads of money and they're just like doing this. That drives me crazy. I have never ever bribed anyone, and I've been all over the world, and that's kind of a claim to fame, is I've never bribed anyone. Some people say, you gotta do that, you gotta grease the cogs, so to speak. No, I've never done it. I've always held my own, and even if you're delayed 5 or 10 minutes, but I just kind of have a charismatic personality about me. And so I'm immediately shaking hands at checkpoints and talking with them and telling them what I'm doing. And it's really hard for them to fine you if you actually tell them what you are doing, and which is good. You're doing good for their country. That's a kind of a cool thing about this job. So just keep that in mind, is cash on hand. If you do have a card on you, odds are you'll be able to go to the capital city and withdraw some money. And yeah, they're gonna ding you quite a bit in terms of fees, but I have found that fee that you pay is basically insurance for them keeping it safe in the ATM, instead of you carrying that wad of cash around on you. Does that make sense? Basically, it's worth the $2.50 international transaction fee that I don't have 10,000 rupees on me at that point, which 10,000 rupees is actually not a lot. Bad example, but you see. So that's just a small little hint, tip, trick right there. A few other things to have in mind. Batteries, always have extra batteries with you. Not necessarily on you, but even if it's back at your hotel. The last thing you want to do is going to be trying to find specialized camera batteries for your camera in a foreign country. You don't want to be doing that. Other things to keep in mind, have a power strip with you. Because you don't want to actually trust the local power grid, because if you're charging a battery or your laptop and you get it fried, that's bad news. I usually have an external hard drive with me, and at the end of each day, I meet with my other videographer, or if I'm just going lone wolf solo, I take all of the footage and I immediately dump it. And we're gonna go into that in the actually next session right here. But right now, that's all about pre-production, and that is anticipation. Last thing you need to know, what dictates the success of a project is anticipation and actually knowing the project. Honestly, when it comes to camera equipment, and if I'm just rattling this stuff off and you're like, man, I can't keep track of all of this checklist stuff, what is he talking about? All you need to know is what is your goal and what is your purpose of this project. And if push comes to shove, if your camera dies, pull out your smartphone and you can still continue to move on and capture footage with your smartphone. I've actually done that before. And smartphones nowadays, they take phenomenal footage. They really, really do. But as long as you know what you're doing, just go with the flow. So be sure to talk with the client beforehand, know of the very clear purpose. Like, okay, the purpose is to document the persecuted church in this region. We can do that. I don't need a drone. I don't need a fancy tripod to get some pans or anything like that. Just know what the purpose is. And then once you have that front loaded, everything else can fall into place. So that's it for this episode. A few hints, tips, tricks on pre-production. Follow us over on Patreon. Once again, I'm gonna upload some awesome hints, tips, tricks over there as well. Just do know that some of the funding that we do get is from nonprofits who we do charge a very, very small amount to offset some of our costs for producing film for them. And yet the other part of our costs at our nonprofit are offset by you wonderful people saying, hey, this is awesome information. We love what God is doing through your nonprofit film ministry. We'd love to support you over on Patreon. So send a few bucks our way and it will be worthwhile, because some of this exclusive community stuff that we push out on Patreon is pretty legit. We'll see you over there.